Hello! This week we're talking with Brian Jones, who is a longtime Scoresheet player. He also runs a Yahoo group called Scoresheet Talk, and he's also once again, for about the 10th time, putting together an annual outing to a baseball game for various folks that live in the area. Hi Brian, how are you?
Hi Jeff, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Sure. How long have you played Scoresheet now?
My first season was back in 1989, so this would be, I guess, my 23rd year.
Well, that's a long time. We started in 87, so you've been with us almost since the get-go.
That's true. I think you've been around only a couple of years when I answered the ad in the back of Sporting News and joined my first league.
Yeah, I remember those days when those little black and white 2 or 3 inch ads in the back of the Sporting News was pretty much how everybody that ran a fantasy game got customers.
Yeah, I had been playing Bill James Fantasy for 1 year, didn't really care that much for it as a points league, and then was looking for something different, saw you and a couple of other competitors, and yours was the one that made the most sense. And all of your other competitors are no longer with us.
Yeah, most of the games back then, well, they did basic rotisserie, kind of like most of the games do now, and so those folks were pretty much overtaken by the Yahoos and the ESPNs of the world. Bill James baseball was surprising to me because they had his name, which was the biggest name in kind of fantasy baseball back then, but they just didn't put as much effort into their game as I thought they would, and they kind of went by the wayside.
Yeah, one of the problems I had was that you had to pay these transaction fees each time you made a transaction. So with the monetary cost associated with trying to compete. And so if you were in second place, you decide, well, is it worth me to pay another couple more bucks or use that for some other purpose? And I didn't really care for that. And I liked that Scoresheet at the time, the lineup costs were a lot more reasonable. And so I wasn't going in debt just to play one season.
Yeah, pretty much everybody back then charged for lineups because everybody had to type them in themselves. So we did our best to design our lineup cards so that you didn't have to change it all the time by having benches and automatic substitution if one of your starters got hurt, which at the time anyhow was pretty much unheard of. Everybody else was, if you had Jack Clark and he missed 2 weeks of games, if you didn't pay some money to substitute in another right fielder, you just got zero production out of the right field spot. So we felt as long as we were charging for lineups, we should allow people to not have to make changes all the time. And then we've kind of stuck with that. Even though lineup changes are free now, we still feel that, somebody wants to go on vacation for 2 weeks or gets bogged down at work or with kids, at least their team pretty much keeps going even if they don't make a lineup change.
Yeah, I really like being able to be on vacation, not feel like, oh, I have to get access to replace my injured player. I really like that.
Yeah, that's one reason we haven't gone to the daily or even weekly transactions where you can pick up players. I know in a lot of those leagues, especially that allow daily transactions, you read about guys who get up at 4 a.m. to check injury reports or even weather reports to see if they want to cut a pitcher and pick up another pitcher based on whether it's going to rain that day in Philadelphia. So even though with technology it'd be a lot easier for us to have daily adds or drops, or at least weekly adds or drops, we just kind of figure it's nice for people to be able to take a little time off and not tell their wife, hey, I can't go to the beach today, I have to spend 2 hours on my computer.
I've told my wife that enough already, that she probably doesn't need to hear that about doing lineup changes.
So you've had pretty good success over your 23 years. You have any idea how many trophies you won?
I've had about 90 teams total. About half of those have made the playoffs, and about 20 of those have won the championship.
Well, that's pretty good. So you're winning one a year, basically. You're averaging about 4 teams a season, and about one of them wins a championship. I'm sorry to say that I don't do that well. I average about 4 teams a year myself, but it's more like every other year I win a championship if I'm lucky.
I do have some roles that fall and I think I've had some success, but I've also had some really bad teams. Like last year, I had a team that lost 130 games. I realized after 3 weeks when I was 3-18 that this was not the year for me. And so I basically sold everything off that wasn't keepable the next year and invested very heavily in prospects.
It's tough if you're in a keeper league, which most Scoresheet teams are. About 2/3 of our leagues, I think, keep players from year to year. And it's just like real life. It's pretty tough to compete in the current year and to build for the future and to do that year after year. You know, most teams at some point have to kind of punt on a year to build for the future. Some teams just rebuild every year. And, you know, I kind of wonder at some point maybe you should not worry about rebuilding and you should actually try to win, but whatever makes people happy.
My philosophy is every spring I feel like I compete. It may have to require a lot of things to go right, but I never rebuild before the start of the season. It's always sometimes in the middle of the season. Soonest I ever did it was last year when I did it after 3 weeks.
Yeah, that's kind of my attitude, which unfortunately comes back to haunt me once in a while when I trade for an old player in May and then I end up the year 24 games out of first place. I often wonder why maybe I didn't try to rebuild a little earlier. But it's just plain fun to compete. And, you know, it's hard to tell how your team's going to do. I think all of us at the end of the drafting season really like our team, or else we wouldn't have picked those players.
My rule of thumb is that once I get 10 games out, then it is time to rebuild. 10 games is usually means that you're not as good as you thought. If that's not just bad luck, that means that something has seriously gone wrong.
Yeah, I guess I'm always more optimistic. But yeah, once you get into double digits out of the playoffs, of course, with wild cards, sometimes it can be quite a while, even if you have a very mediocre team, before you're really 10 games out of a playoff spot, because you have your division win and then you've got the wild card team, and usually one of those is somewhat within reach if you're anywhere near 500.
Not if you start off the season 3-18.
Well, yeah. Yeah. Well, the other thing you can't trade garbage for good players either. So if you really have a bad team, you're kind of stuck. You don't want to trade your draft picks if you're rebuilding. You probably don't have a bunch of players that other people want, or you wouldn't be 3-18. It's kind of like the Pittsburgh Pirates. It's been 18 years since they had a winning record, I think.
But usually you do have bullpen guys that you can trade for draft picks. Even the guys who help you to 3-18 who aren't as good as you thought they were, they're not really starters, someone else will want them as reserves. And so you can at least catch them for a little bump up in draft picks.
That is true. The teams that are fighting for a playoff spot always could use depth at one position or another. That's also why I like drafting a lot of pitchers in the second half of the draft. Because you can always, if you have a pitcher who's getting major league playing time and is putting up anywhere near acceptable numbers, you can always trade him to some contender. Right? Teams always need more pitching. Especially, like you said, you draft a reliever in round 27 that he may only get 50, 60 innings all year, but if it's a 2.8 ERA, somebody is going to trade you for those great stats and give you a pretty good draft pick sometimes.
Usually in my spring draft, I try to end up with half pitchers, half position players by the time I'm done through all 35 rounds. That's about what I aim for.
Yeah, that's my current thing. I remember for years, though, I used to end up with more like 22 hitters and 13 pitchers because it's just more fun to draft hitters. I mean, really, you see some guy sitting there who's a part-time outfielder who gets one home run every 16 at-bats, and you got to have him. Even if you've already got 7 outfielders, you think, I need him. I used to end up with, like I said, just far more hitters than I could ever use, and barely enough pitchers, and then as soon as 2 or 3 pitchers got injured, my team would be one of those teams searching for more pitching.
And you'd be seeing that wonderful pitcher AAA showing up with the 8 ERA.
Yeah, that 8 ERA is not good. And I tell you, calling people to see if they want to trade you a pitcher in May or June is usually pretty futile. They just, if they're a good friend, they usually just laugh. And if they're not much of a friend, they kind of, slough you off a little bit. Yeah. So you've enjoyed Scoresheet for 23 years, I assume, or you wouldn't still be doing it?
Yes, I have been. I've enjoyed it quite a bit. Currently, I do 4 teams a year. I found that having more, I just didn't have the free time to handle more than 4. 3 of my teams are by email, and then I have 1 live draft that occurs each March, which is a combined 24-team league. And that is the most enjoyable day of the year because getting 24 guys who are as crazy about baseball as we are all in one room is really a lot of fun.
We used to put a real emphasis in our preseason things and telling folks, hey, try to get together for a live draft and all. And that's what we called it. It's the best day of the year. We have found, though, that, with the web and chat rooms and our web draft and email and people moving, that the number of leagues that hold live draft has really dropped down. It used to be that we had two types of leagues. We either had leagues where individuals joined and they drafted by sending ranking lists to our office, or pretty much all the other leagues actually got together and did a live draft. We'd have one or two that did a phone draft, but mostly it was guys getting together at someone's house or maybe going to a pizza parlor or something. And I think everybody really enjoyed that, but it's just died down a lot. I think even of our private league drafts, or the leagues that find their own owners, I think 80% of them do some sort of internet draft now, and there's just not many leagues that get together and really have that fun.
Even that league I described is now about half via a chat room, and the other half are live in a conference room.
Yeah, that's still better than not interacting. So I think, the web draft and chat rooms and all are fun. I think having a message feature finally on our website added last year at least helped the interaction. So when you're doing a web draft now, you can still give your friend grief for picking a player that is just broke his finger.
And it's great when you get comments if you take someone and everyone else and go, oh, I was waiting for him. I wanted on my team. That's really a lot of fun.
Well, that's the best part of a live draft is when you pick a guy and 6 people start swearing. And then the flip side, of course, is when you pick a guy and 6 people start laughing. That's not necessarily the best part of the day. Yeah, well, that's good that you've done this so many years. Plus, you do other things. You've gone to Ron Chandler's convention down in Phoenix a few times. And as I mentioned when we started, you put together an outing to a baseball game every year. And you also run a Yahoo group that's dedicated to Scoresheet. Scoresheet-Talk?
Yeah, that's correct. Scoresheet-Talk. You can look for it on the Yahoo group site. We have, I think, about 800 subscribers to that now. It's been around for over 15 years. It's been on Yahoo groups for over 10. Probably run about 30 messages a day. Our busiest time is in March when everyone is getting ready to draft. People are asking about lineup questions and pretty much any type of questions that involve Scoresheet and to a lesser extent baseball.
Yeah, actually, it is a little surprising. I think it's not just March, it's the entire off season is really a busier time than during the season because most of the questions seem to be, well, a lot of the questions anyhow in the early off season are who should I keep or is this guy worth keeping? And then there's year-round, there's questions about trades. But it is kind of interesting to me that it's really kind of a hot stove centric list, and that November, December, January will have far more messages on it than May, June, July does.
And a couple of things that we do during the off season is we run a mock draft, and we also basically take a vote among all the participants to get a wisdom of the crowd to value the players. So you might not like someone, but if everyone else is saying that he's the top shortstop in the American League, you would have an idea of what you should be able to get for him in trade value.
Well, likewise, I think by far the most valuable part of a mock draft, or even the rankings, is to tell you when you're overvaluing a player. If you're thinking to yourself, gee, I better draft this guy in my draft in round 7, and you look at a mock draft and he lasts till round 17, that means not a single person in that mock draft wanted him before round 17. Whereas the opposite is not always true. If some guy goes in round 6, that doesn't necessarily mean he's a round 6 pick. It just means one person really liked him.
You're correct, and an undervalue isn't going to hurt you. It just means that one of your competitors will get that player probably a little bit earlier. But if you overvalue a player, he's going to eat a spot on your team and hurt you.
Yeah, that's the worst. It's aggravating when you miss out on a player, but if you miss out on him, you're going to take the next player on your list, and it's not that big a deal. But you're right. If you draft someone in round 6, like I used to do with Ricky Weeks, and then I finally stopped drafting him in time for him to become good. But, you draft a guy like Ricky Weeks 4 years ago in round 6, and now you've got no second baseman. You've wasted a round 6 pick. Everybody else is getting a number 2 starting pitcher or a real starting second baseman in that round. You're at a pretty big disadvantage.
your Ricky Weeks is my Chris Davis. I finally decided this year I was not going to select him no matter what.
The Scoresheet Talk list is an open group, so anybody that wants to join and wants to be a part of a group that just talks about Scoresheet baseball and, like you said, a little bit maybe about baseball in general or fantasy in general, but mostly Scoresheet baseball. All they have to do is go to Yahoo Groups and search for the group Scoresheet-Talk, correct?
That's correct. It is moderated, so we have to approve your subscription, and then if you get too far off topics or get involved in flame war, myself and a couple moderators are making sure that everything stays on topic.
Yeah, no, it's all, Yahoo Groups is a free thing, and this is a group that I guess you guys have to approve, but it's pretty much open to anybody. It's not an invitation-only list, so if you want to join the list, all you have to do is go to Yahoo Groups, and I guess you have to sign up for Yahoo if you're not already a Yahoo member, but that's free, so I'd recommend it. It's a great way to bounce ideas off of other people and to read what people have to say about prospects or proposed trades or, like you said, lineup decisions. The other thing you're doing is the annual outing for those of us that get together. Usually we have a couple dozen people go to a game together, or this year we're looks like we're going to have at least 30 and hopefully 40 or 50 people. It's a Sacramento Rivercats game on Sunday afternoon, July 17th. They're playing the Fresno Grizzlies, which is a Giants affiliate, so I'll actually have a team to root for, which is good. The game's in the afternoon on that Sunday. We'll be meeting probably about 11 o'clock and barbecuing up some burgers and hot dogs for a couple hours, and then we'll all sit together at the game and probably talk for an hour or so after the game. If you'd like to go, Brian, let's see, you're going to be the one buying the tickets, correct?
Yes. So send me an email at Brian, that's BRIAN, at dewberryjones.com, DEWBERRYJONES.com. And just send me an email that you're interested. It looks like the price will at the most be $17. It may be less, but we're going to qualify for a group discount from their usual pricing. The
plan is now, anyhow, to buy tickets that are in the normal $19 section, which is kind of the upper part of the lower deck, but in the infield, and then they'll knock a couple dollars off for us having a group, and if we get a big enough group, they might give us a couple free tickets. We can lower the cost a little bit. It'll be around $17 a person, and like I said, David and I will bring barbecues and burgers and hot dogs and things like that for before the game. We've done this for a few years, and it's a pretty good time to get together with other Scoresheet owners, and it's like any baseball game. Talk about baseball, talk some about Scoresheet. You can ask questions if you want to us. So mainly it's just kind of a fun outing from baseball fans. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Like I was mentioning about the draft, it's fun to get together with people who are fanatic about baseball and Scoresheet and just sit together and chat. Yeah, and we try to move around, sit next to different people during the game and all that. So yeah, if you live kind of a reasonable distance from Sacramento and want to go to a AAA baseball game with a bunch of Scoresheet fans, send Brian an email, or if you didn't get that email address, send us an email or call us at Scoresheet, and we'll put you in touch with Brian. Maybe I can pick up some hints. I'm hoping to have a couple teams still in the pennant race by the end of July, so hopefully I can pick someone's brain as to what relievers to trade for. Well, Brian, thanks for coming on. It's good chatting with you. Thank you very much, Jeff. And I'm sure I'll talk to you before then, and we'll see you in July. Yeah, I'll see you in July. Thank you very much. All right, thanks. Bye.